the next step is never clear until the first step is taken. The third step isn't clear until the second step is taken. You have to take the first step, and just let's say, for instance, the next step's around the corner, but you can't see around the corner until you take that first step, and you're like, oh shit, it's a corner. That's where the next step is. You have to take the step in order to get close enough to that next step to where you could see what the options are, but there is absence of certainty. The only thing that's certain is you are going to take that first step.
How many businesses do you guys run out of here?
One. Yeah, we used to have a couple things all kind of in here, but we moved one business. Our
RBO.
Yeah, well,
Real business
I guess
owners.
so. Yeah,
I
yeah.
guess.
So,
I mean, we don't have a ton of employees or anything. With
so
that,
I feel like I just stumbled
media
onto
team.
something though. It seems like as you have grown and expanded in scale, it sounds like maybe there's been some consolidation or simplification.
yeah, there has been. So we used to have all different kinds of entities and different things going on and projects, and now it's really just easier accounting. We have 60-day credit repair, and then Trev and I have Real Business Owners, which has turned into its own business. You know, it was our podcast and our brand that we created to help support our businesses, right? Like we speak to business owners. So we wanted to create a show that in a brand that speaks to business owners, and then by default obviously would attract more business to our businesses, but it turned into a business in itself, you know? And so it's cool. We have a full media department for it. And
that's a lesson right there though, that, you know, when you're solving problems for your own business, it does, when you create this solution, it can potentially be another business, right?
Sure.
And you see that quite frequently, because that's all we were trying to do is like, let's get creative. Like, how can we go outside of the box, right? The same marketing avenues that everybody else is going down. And we're like, well, social media is really starting to take off and people are starting to, you know, become successful. We went to a Gary Vee event that Kale had a hunch, you know, whatever you want to call it. I'm reading a book right now that talks about, you know, well, it's Outwitting the Devil.
such a good
Where
one.
you're talking about a hunch, and it's like, no, that's not a hunch. That's been given to you by individuals on a whole different plane.
Yeah.
But anyways, that's
Oh yeah,
I was chasing
that's neither here nor there.
No,
Like,
actually,
yeah,
I will lean into that moment right there.
Okay.
Listen, if you have not read Outwitting the Devil, first of all, get over the whole like it's too spiritual or it's too Christian or it's too religious or whatever. It's a ridiculously awesome, epic,
It's so
life-changing
good.
book.
Well, why would you?
I actually liked it better than Think and Grow Rich.
Me too.
by
Hands
Napoleon
down.
Hill.
Me too.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, talking about drift.
Yep.
And, oh my God, it's so good. So
Yeah.
anyway, I didn't hijack the moment.
Well,
but
I
yes.
said Kale had a hunch, and then I was like, I literally read that this morning after my run. It was talking about the hunches. And so I was like, oh, that's weird. I'm saying hunch after I read that this morning, and now it's turning into a lesson for you guys listening. So I guess read.
Dude, I actually really liked Gary Vee. I still do. I really like Gary Vee, but I was just like, man, I really want to do business with this guy, right? And a lot of people are probably like, oh, whatever, he's too big for you. I'm not going to reach out. I started kind of hunting down his team, and I was like, hey, like I'm willing to pay. Like I found, like I did research. I figured out he owned like a marketing agency, and he owned these other brands, and they were just starting Vayner Sports, where you can hire athletes to be brand ambassadors and all that stuff. And so I was just like hitting this guy up, and I remember coming in and telling Trev, I'm like, dude, I've emailed him and there's not responding. He's like, just keep emailing him. So I did, and then dude replied, and he was like, hey, let's hop on a call. And it turned into an introduction to Gary Vee's brother, AJ, and then we went out and actually had an interview with AJ, and we kind of developed this relationship. We hired one of their athletes to do some marketing videos, and I was like, this is cool, man. We're like doing business with Gary Vee. And then AJ was like, hey, you guys should go to his event he's throwing, Agent 2021, and just go out there. And so I get off the phone with him, and I go to Trevor and Jeremy, and I'm like, dude, I just have a feeling we really should go and be there and do that. Like, I think it's going to turn into some, even though it's not the ideal events we usually go to. Typically, we want to go to events where it's like, we're going to be talking to guys like you, Jeff, where they're going to be like, hey, we got business communities, and we refer business and do all this stuff, and all that stuff. And so I'm like, I don't think there's going to be really much of that there, but I got a feeling we should be there.
It was only for, the reason why they called it Agent 2021 is because it was for real estate agents,
insurance agents, real estate
agents, and then like mortgage brokers or mortgage. Maybe they call them agents. I don't know, but it was like for 3 industries, and accounting and anything that we had our hands in had nothing to do with this event. And that's why it was so weird why Kale was pitching it. Like, yo, I've got this hunch. I think we need to be there. I was just like, okay, whatever.
Yeah,
it was in Miami. Yeah. It was like, we're all the way across.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's not like a Vegas thing where we can drive an hour and a half and be there. You know, so it was a big commitment, and we did it, dude. And
yeah, and it was.
And that was where you got the idea or sort of the inspiration.
Yeah, I mean, basically him talking, and we got to be a little bit more personal with him out there. And we we had meetings with his mom and his sister. She became a client. And it was just cool getting a little closer with these guys that we wanted to do business with, and that we just kind of like put in our vision, right? And so anyway, yeah, man, he was sitting there talking one day, and he's like, listen, everybody's going to be walking around with videographers 3-4 years from now. It's like, you need to be ahead of that. Start now. Like, go home, hire a videographer like I did with D-Rug, start putting your content out there. You guys need to do it. I projected this and was right. I projected that and was right. And we were just sitting in there like, all right, we need to just do it. So we got home, and this kid comes in to interview for a sales job. And Trevor calls me, and he's like, bro, this is weird, but you know how we just got home from Gary V's event? He said, hire a videographer. This kid wants a sales job, but he's in school right now to be a videographer. So I'm thinking we hire him as a videographer. I'm like, do it. Our other partner's like, guys, like, I don't know if it's in the budget. We're like, we're doing it.
No, he goes, full time? Well, I don't know if we need him full time. Like, maybe we should talk about part time. But again, not everybody's going to share your vision, right? Or see it the way that you see it. And when you see it clearly, and then the universe opens up and hands you a videographer right after somebody said get videographers when he was interviewing for a sales job, I was staring at him like, the universe is forcing us to go down this path, and I have to acknowledge it. So I literally called Kel on the spot. I'm like, bro, there's a videographer sitting in my chair.
How true is that? How? Let me just ask you guys a blanket question. How many times has something like that happened that somebody might call coincidence or serendipity, but we all know it was really your reticular activating system being tuned to seek something and it shall appear.
Right.
How often does that happen?
It happens every time that you take a step moving in a direction where you know that you're making the right decision. Kel knew he was making the right decision based upon that emotion. Even if it didn't make sense, he still listened to that emotion, and he honored that hunch. That communication from that other plane, so to speak, as we talked about in that book. And then because he did, another domino fell, and then another domino fell. And I believe as long as you're doing all the right things with the right intentions, then those surprises happen more frequently.
Yeah. So let me ask this: How would you say, either one of you or both of you? Because I completely agree with you, right? I mean, this is, in my life, has borne this out for years now, right? Just one thing after another. Like, if I try to stitch together the constellation of coincidences that have led me to where I am, it's like, it's ridiculous. It's algorithmically impossible, except that it actually happened, right?
Yep.
Right.
So, but I think there's people that are tuned in to those frequencies and capable of trusting their intuition.
Yeah.
And there's people that aren't, and it's probably not as black and white as that. But what would you say were the experiences and or maybe the habits or practices that you guys have used to develop that relationship with yourselves, where you're able to follow your intuition into those blind victories?
I mean, dude, I'll be honest with you. Like, this is like the main ingredient to the success I've had in my life is that exactly what we're talking about. And I don't know why. Okay, I have always just had like this feeling that I've trusted to be like, okay, well, go there, right? But that's really all this has all been. Like, it happens to me all of the time. And I'm just like, okay, I need to be there.
Are you just lucky?
No, I just like literally, like, I do the work, you know what I mean? Like, I do the work, and I work hard because I don't like to let people down. That's like kind of like a thing of mine that sometimes hurts you, and then a lot of time helps me. Like, I don't like to let people down. And so when I'm looking for something, I don't know, man. I just follow direction. Like, I got an opportunity one time to speak at an event the very first time, and it was like, oh, but by the way, in order to speak, we want you to pay $5,000 and sponsor our event. And it's like, oh, well, most people will be like, well, that's just scam. You just bait and switched me. But I was like, I feel like I actually need to do that. So I'm like, okay, cool. I'll pay the money, sponsor your event. And then, it turned into all these different events. And I just feel like when I get invited to things, like, I just want to be out in the world because that's where all the best relationships come from. You know, clear back where I met you. You know what I mean? It's like, I did not want to be there. You know what I mean? But I like just trusted that that's where I needed to be. And so I've just always had this internal thing where I'm like, I got to trust it.
It's kind of like in being like a yes state of openness.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Honestly, like I am kind of the epitome of a yes man, and it does get me in trouble sometimes, but it has served me so well to just be like, yeah, man, I'd love to be on your podcast. Yeah.
But I know you well enough, I think, to say that I don't experience you as a yes man in the corporate compliant sense of that term.
That's
I
true.
experience you as a yes energy of like openness and eagerness towards possibility.
Right. Yeah,
I mean,
I would agree with that.
It's the people that have the most experiences have a better perspective, right? And I think Kale's done a really good job, like you said, saying yes to opportunities that have a big question mark on the other side of it. And I think a lot of people only want to say yes to opportunities that they could see clearly that there's something on the other side of it, right? Rather than just trusting that you're the individual that will dictate the outcome, not the opportunity.
I'll tell you what it really is for me. Now that we're talking about it a little bit, is like I've always been very aware of when I'm scared and I have fear, and that has usually been a telling sign to me of like, well, I need to do it then, right? Like I've always been this person of willingness, you know what I mean? And well, I haven't always been, but I learned that I needed to be. And so when I am scared of something, like I was scared to write a book, I was scared to get on stage, I'm scared when I went to events to actually like go over and shake people's hands and like meet them and like, oh, what if I don't know what to say, you know what I mean? And so I was scared to reach out to Gary V's crew, like, oh my gosh, like I'm afraid of rejection, like anything else, like anybody else at different phases in your life. And so like I've always just been not afraid to own that I'm afraid and do it anyway. And when I know that I'm like, okay, I need to actually, or I know that I'm like feeling nervous around somebody, or I'm scared to speak up, or scared to do something that I'm like afraid of criticism, I need to do it anyway. Because,
he does do that.
Yeah, because like we talked about on our podcast, it's like, I don't want to be afraid of what everybody thinks about me. I don't want to be afraid of like criticism or judgment. But you acknowledge
that you are. Yeah. You just don't want to be.
And just like the secret to getting better at anything is like put in the reps. You know what I mean?
Courageous, meaning not that you are unafraid, but that you take action in the presence of fear.
Courage is so I have 4 family values, core values of my family, and courage is on there as one of the main things. And that's like literally when I pray every morning, it's like I pray for courage. I pray for my kids to have courage, because I really think that is just such a huge, I don't even know what to call it. It's just a huge trait for somebody to have, to actually really not only build like success, okay, but influence the world in the way that it needs to be influenced. Like we have enough shit out there in the world. And when I pray, in my prayer, I literally say, give my kids the courage to fight when they go through darkness, fight when they're going through tough times, challenging times, but also make sure they have the courage to share, influence, and be a light in the world, so that they can obviously, impact the world in a positive way. Because that's when we make impact, right? Is when we're our bright selves, like we got to share it, but we also got to have courage, because we usually, when we're in our dark times, it's kind of hard to actually like get out there and share. Like you don't feel like you have the value to go out there and like impact other people, because you're kind of in a dark place. You're struggling through your own things. And so I just always pray for my children and myself and my wife to have courage in those dark times, and then also have courage in those bright times to actually influence in the way that you need to influence the world, because we want the world to continue to be bright. We don't want it to continue to get owned by the darkness. And I want to be on that side of it. I want to be on that side of the world. Like I see a lot of ugliness out there in the world, and we need that. We need ugliness to have like the great things too, right? Mm-hmm. We need the dark to have the light. And so I think it's important to have courage through both. And influence on the positive side.
Well, I remember, when we first joined the Arate Syndicate, it was $6,000 a month each for each of
you guys.
Each of us. It wasn't. Okay. Yeah, I mean, it was so.
Like buy one get the other half off.
We tried. Yeah, we tried. Hey,
yeah, Trevor did actually email that.
I was like, yo, like we're representing pretty much the same company, same brand, same whatever. Like I'm down to pay or whatever, but could we do like a buy one get one half off or something? Like $3,000 a month, or whatever. And like, nope, it's reserved for 100 people.
I was gonna say they're not gonna have trouble filling that spot.
They didn't have trouble. Yeah. They had like 33,000 applicants or something like that. And so me and Kel, we got lucky enough to be chosen to be in that 100 group. And I remember traveling around. We went to Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. We went to Whistler, Canada. We went to some cool spots, and we heard from some amazing people. Joe Dispenza,
Evan Carmichael,
cool. You know, a lot of awesome people. But every time that they did Q&A, Kale's over there with his hand up.
That's so
and
Kale,
he goes like this, and he leans over and he goes, "Dude, I don't really need to ask a question, but I get so scared and I get nervous, and I just want to ask a question."
I'm like,
so it's like
I'm like trying to come over with a question while my hands up.
If they pick him, he's better have a damn question, you know. And so a couple times
That's
they pick
cool,
him, and
though.
he'd stand up and he'd ask a
hold
question.
on, let's park on that moment for a second. So
that's
you
why
didn't actually have a question.
No.
You just had fear.
And he
of
forced it.
the scenario of
Yes.
being called on with a question, and
Yes.
so you forced yourself to act like you had a question.
Yep.
Yeah.
Just because you were the fear irritated you that much.
And he stood up and he asked a question.
and like you just like, and in the moment you come up with a question.
And I will say that the question that he asked was the question that got the entire room buzzing and everybody turning around and communicating to each other, pulling us off to the side. Everybody's trying to give each other, "Hey man, we've done this, we've done that, we've experienced that. You should try this. You should do." And so, and then a lot of other people are like, "Oh, I've been through that. I've experienced that. That's, you know." And so it really actually brought the room together with one common denominator that a lot of high power or high level entrepreneurs have experienced. Right?
So I want to dig into that moment because I feel like this moment is a microcosmic representation of entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
In many ways. So you get called on. So you raise your hand.
Right.
You don't know what question you're going to ask,
Right.
and you don't know if they're going to call on you.
Right.
Okay. By the way, I mean if that's not a metaphor for entrepreneurship, it's like, okay, I have
going
this
into
fear.
it
Yeah.
blind.
I want to, because here's the deal. I want to be the kind of person that steps up in this moment as a leader. And for most
Yeah.
people in the context of their life, they want to be the kind of person that steps up in the moment of their own life and
Right.
leads themselves and their family to where, to a vision of a better place, right?
Right.
So you want to be this kind of person. What does that kind of person do? That kind of person raises their hand. But, and we talk a lot about action in the face of fear, but it's also, the other side of that coin is action in the absence of certainty. Those are two sides of the same coin, right?
Yep.
So you're literally raising your hand to ask a question, not knowing what question you have to ask, right?
Right.
And then walk me through the moment. Did the question come to your mind before they called on you, when they called on you, right after they called on you when you were standing up to ask it? Did you open your mouth and the question, like literally, I want you to break it down to the ridiculous.
Okay. So, all right. First of all, to be honest, like we're there to network and we're there to have proximity to people that we want in our lives because they can bring a lot of value to us, our whole ecosystem, everything. So I want to be known by them, right?
Okay.
So what's a great way to do that is ask a question, right? Like raise your hand when everyone else isn't, right? But some other people were, but majority of the audience doesn't raise their hand, right? And I want to be known by the audience
and
too.
as a speaker and a leader, you notice the people that raise their hands.
Yeah, exactly.
Consistently. Yeah.
And so I'm like, okay, like part of my strategy is I want to be known by these guys. So I'm going to ask questions, right? I also think it's really important. And nowadays I realize like we really live in this ecosystem of like giving and receiving. And like, I want to receive, like when I'm paying to be somewhere, not only do I want to get known and network and get business and all that stuff, but like I want to receive like answers to problems, right? So anyway, I raise my hand, my heart's freaking pumping. I see him go grab the mic to come over and hand it to me. And I'm like, what am I going to ask? And I'm like, okay, well,
So they put the mic in your hand.
Yeah.
At that moment, do you know your question?
Yeah, I do. As they're walking it over, it's like pretty easy for me to be like, okay, well, here's the thing. I need to receive something that's going to help solve a problem. Our problem right now is like we're struggling in our business partnership and getting our company structured to where everyone feels whole and there's no resentments. And so I just asked a question about like our business partnerships and like if they have struggled with that because they all have multiple businesses and how does that work?
Let me sorry, forgive me for interrupting, but I just this is such a specific scenario that I think there's so much wisdom baked into.
Yeah.
Was that the most relevant? Was that the most painful and relevant thing you could pull out to talk about in that moment?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I think there's a wisdom in that you didn't ask the question
generic, basic,
and your partner, you had a partner in the room. Right. So you asked a question about a vulnerable thing that involved another person who was sitting right there with you to there's a risk. You took a risk.
Right.
Is my point.
Okay. Right. Yeah, absolutely.
All right, keep going,
and to be honest, here's a ton of value of just raising that hand without even knowing my question. Yeah, my intention is to, get known and all these things, right? And receive some value. But at the same time, like, I didn't have a whole lot of time to think of bullshit. Like, because I could have probably, if I had more time, sat there and thought of like,
right.
Oh, well, like, what's something that's going to impress the crowd that I don't really care about right now? Or how can I sound smart? Or a lot of people do that.
You didn't have enough time to
I
say
didn't have enough time.
We're doing 50 million. How do you do 100 million?
Right.
And then pound your chest.
Like,
So you didn't
I
have
could
enough
ask
time to say anything but the truth.
Yeah,
basically.
exactly.
Yeah.
So I didn't think about that till later, but it's like, dude, I didn't really give myself a lot of time to come up with some bullshit of like, hey, I'm trying to scale, and what are the 3 things that you think I should do to scale faster or whatever, right? I was just like, oh shit, I need to think of something like, what am I going through in my life that I could really use some help on? I need to think of it quick. Oh my gosh, we're struggling with business partnerships. I'm going to talk about that, and then everybody, because of that vulnerable question, was like, I've been there too. And, and it was cool, man. It was cool. It created a lot in that moment. And it was a way for me to, obviously, now looking back, like, also give to the audience too, because there's a lot of people in there that were struggling with that, and or just recently come out of that, or had been through there in the past, where they're like, man, I had to get through a partnership like that as well, or I'm struggling with that right now. So it really became a cool thing, but it was really, I just wanted to practice courage, and I really just I felt my heart beating. I committed to making this, effort to be known. I raised my hand, my heart was freaking pumping, and I was just like, I gotta be real in this moment.
And I would say, again, out of that whole weekend, that moment was more of a masterminding moment with the crowd, with the speakers, with everybody like coming together, and like a lot of people started taking the mics. More hands started getting raised after the question than prior, when people said, do you have questions? Because they wanted to put their input in on this subject, or say that they were also struggling with it as well. And so people were turned around, because we were in the back. Everyone was turned around. Some people are saying stuff over and so it, like when I said it brought people together, that's exactly what it did, because there was so much common pain in that room. And when, like, it's fun to have a cool experience with people, but when you've experienced very similar common pains, like it really deepens a relationship, because you get
vulnerability.
Each other. Yeah.
I think you guys are touching on, just in terms of like, culture and sociology, the way that vulnerability creates safety.
Right. That
when one person allows themselves, and the word vulnerability, I mean, you guys know I'm a word nerd, right? The Latin vulnus.
I love it.
Vulnus is a wound. The Latin word vulnus is the Latin word for wound. So vulnerability is the ability to be wounded.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So
that makes so much sense.
So when you're vulnerable in a space, what you do is you create the permission and the consciousness in the space that by you allowing yourself to be wounded, you're by implication suggesting there's safety in the room, which gives everybody else permission to open up too.
Yeah.
And so I personally believe, and I don't know if this has always been a truth, because I wasn't alive when I wasn't alive, but I believe in the world that we live in today. And maybe this is me trying to force my personal development agenda onto the world, but I kind of don't think so. I actually don't think you can succeed without succeed as much as you could without developing the ability to be vulnerable.
Oh, I agree with that.
Would you guys agree with that?
Yeah, I think it's one of the biggest traits as a leader too.
You're unrelatable.
Yeah.
Vulnerability shows your human side, and we all put our armor on when we leave the house and want to show the unhuman side. In other words, try to live up to some random labels, right? Or in order to fit in. We've talked about that. Again, if you're listening to this show, go listen to our show on Real Business Owners, because again, this is a kind of a continuation episode of the one that we just had. But vulnerability, without a doubt, like even me talking openly in our podcast about my drug addiction in the past, him talking openly about being in therapy or going through a divorce or having a child at a young age, it says, wow, well, Kel's more like me than he isn't, and he's successful. You know what I mean? And so that in that situation, maybe they can see a little bit of themselves in you, and that gives hope, I believe.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. People are attracted to raw, real, relevant, right? If they
Yeah,
can't,
and let's be clear. I mean, we're all guys in this room that like I'm still coming to grips with this term, but we're influencers, right? Like it's part of our job description, right?
Yeah.
If you were going to write down all our roles, one of our roles is building content to have influence in the world. But I'm still like uncomfortable with the term. But
somebody texted Jared, one of our own employees, says, "You guys are influenced." I said, "But like,
but here's the thing,
laughy faces."
Here's the thing, you're professionally influential.
Yeah.
Thus, I would say you guys are actually more of influencers than a lot of the people that proudly talk about being influencers that really like don't have a profitable business because they spend all their money on their video
trying
guy
to look like an influencer.
And they have a fake private jet studio in their office to take Ibiza pictures with.
have you ever seen one of those in life? In like real life?
I talk about it in my book, dude. You can actually go online and rent private jet studios just to take pictures.
I've known that. I've never actually seen one.
I mean, the one time I looked it up when I was doing research for the book, it was $62 an hour.
Yeah.
So you just go take pictures.
So anybody can have a jet for an hour.
Yeah. I mean, you can't. You're not going to get any footage of it landing anywhere. But anyway, but yeah, to go back to that story, I think you're really, here's the thing. Asking a question at a mastermind did not make Kale and Trevor successful.
No.
Right.
But the same traits that were exhibited in that moment are absolutely why you guys are so successful. Vulnerability, moving into fear,
right?
Putting yourself in proximity to success. What are the other things? Trusting yourself, taking action in the absence of certainty and trusting that in the moment what was needed would present.
Right.
I mean, these are all unifying traits of successful people.
And courage, like we talked about. I mean, you have to have courage to be in business, you know what I mean? To accomplish any sort of success.
Let's look at it like this. I would say entrepreneurship is like this. You have to take the first step and just, let's say, for instance, the next step's around the corner, but you can't see around the corner until you take that first step and you're like, oh shit, it's a corner. That's where the next step is.
Yeah.
Right? And then, oh, it's around this corner. So the next step is never clear until the first step is taken. The third step isn't clear until the second step is taken. You have to take the step in order to get close enough to that next step to where you can see what the options are, but there is absence of certainty.
Yeah.
The only thing that's certain is you are going to take that first step. And again, it's just doubling and tripling down on you because you know you want that thing bad enough that it doesn't matter what it is. I will take that first step and bet on myself every time that no matter what the environment is, I will dictate my outcome, not the circumstance, not the environment. And again, it's every step, again, has revealed itself. Going to Miami to a Gary Vee event, we took that random ass step, and then guess what? It was presented to us that the next step is hiring a videographer, and then after a videographer, the next step is starting a podcast.
As a sales guy for an interview.
It showed up as. See what I'm saying? Yeah. Like, it's just taking the step. The next one will reveal itself when you're on that step.
Yeah, and honestly, if it revealed itself before that,
you might not take it.
You wouldn't be tuned for it. You wouldn't have the context to understand it.
Or you might not take it because if you actually saw how painful and how
if you could see all the steps, they would just be
like, hell no.
Yeah, that's what I think is so important for people to take from this is it's better this way.
Right.
It's better that you can only see the step in front of you. If you could see all the steps,
you'd be overwhelmed.
You would be overwhelmed. You just wouldn't move,
yeah.
right? And so, there's a word for this, faith.
Yeah.
Not to get all biblical, but Hebrews 11:1, faith is the substance of what is hoped for. We talked about certainty. The certainty of what is not seen.
Yeah.
That is faith.
Right.
So you're saying you take the step that you can see in certainty that the next step will reveal itself, and that is faith. And I think that as soon as you bring the word faith in, some people put up walls. Some people are like, oh, yay, they're finally going to talk about God. And other people are like, oh, I'm tuning out. They're talking about God, right?
Another Jesus guy.
But here's the thing. Yeah. What is faith in whatever look like in practice?
Right.
If not faith in yourself.
In yourself, 100%.
Right? If you believe in this higher power, you believe you're a product of and a relationship to and a derivation from that higher power. So it's, whatever your higher power is or isn't, faith is going to show up as doing things in the absence of certainty yourself. Yeah. And that's where I think that we can extract the religious piece of the equation and just say faith is an action.
Yeah.
It's moving forward with the step that you can see, knowing that the next one will reveal itself once you've successfully taken the one you can see.
Yeah.
But
right?
you got to be weird enough to take that first step.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like where everybody's like, dude, why would you take that step? What are you going to do after that? I don't know, but I'm not, yeah.
And so let's talk about that. I mean, obviously, and for context, again, people, if you go listen to our episode with me on the RBO show, a Real Business Owners show, I won't assume everybody knows the acronyms yet, that we just recorded. We talked about the origin of weird, right? And what that word really means. And we don't need to rehash it, but when you act weird, when you let go of worrying what other people think, when you raise your hand in a room when most people haven't raised their hand, right? Yeah. The initial fear of standing out, let's talk about what happens from there.
Yeah.
Right? Because you didn't stand out forever.
Yeah.
Eventually, what happened in the room?
Well, I mean, a lot came from that. I mean, we did become more known in the group.
Yeah, well, I shouldn't say you don't stand out, but it's not a negative thing.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, let's just say, again, right after that was the last question before the session ended. Mm-hmm. So then right after that, there was a circle around us.
Yeah, so
tons of people. And so all of a sudden, now we're literally not in a room of strangers anymore because of the vulnerability, and people started sharing their vulnerable stories of terrible partnerships or good ones that got turned or terrible to then good, or whatever it is. And this wall of people that was by us, it just immediately deepened the relationship.
Would you say you became at that point viewed as leaders in the room?
I don't know. I think
maybe not the leaders,
right?
But leaders.
I would say so, because I think anytime you go into
probably more so than we would give ourselves credit for. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, and I think when you go into like a room or a community or something like that, I think it's pretty powerful. If you're really there for success and you're trying to get to another level, do you want to just go and be in the room? Like, there's power in that, or do you want to leave that room being rememberable? You know what I mean? Like you want to leave the room being rememberable. I mean, especially if you're there to network and to try and add value into other people's lives and receive value. It's like you want to become rememberable so that you can actually start cultivating some deeper relationships. And so being vulnerable and then being rememberable. Now, like, people start reaching out to you because they remember you. They go and find you on Facebook and they add you. And so all of that stuff happened from just having the courage to be vulnerable and stand up and ask a question in front of this crowd that you don't know.
Yeah, it's so interesting. The flip side, I mean, I think everybody would own, like, I am seeking a greater degree of success. But in the moment of opportunity to actually receive clarity or wisdom around a greater degree of success, what will block that is not being willing to acknowledge and demonstrate and be seen as lacking that success which you're seeking.
Well, I think
you know what I mean? Like, people, if you're going to raise and ask a question, in the moment of asking for what you're looking for, you have to acknowledge that you don't have it. And I think a lot of people in those environments are like, well, I don't want to stand up and talk about where I'm weak.
Yeah.
Well,
or what I lack.
It's right. Not even that, dude. And that's accurate, but it's not just that. People, not only do they not want to talk about where they lack or where they're weak, they don't even want to shine thoughts or any attention individually on where they lack or where they're weak.
Even in their own mind.
Even in their own mind. Yeah. Because that's the first step, right? It has to happen in the mind first before it turns into an action. And if people aren't willing to be honest with themselves first and foremost, how would they ever be honest with a crowd of people? You see what I'm saying? And so I think that's what's lacking in the world is people's ability to assess self honestly and shine light in the areas where they're weak or where they potentially would look vulnerable, right? Because they would have to admit that they've lived in a wrong manner for this period of time, and it's easier to turn on Netflix and distract yourself from the areas that you're weak than assess, right?
Yeah, and to say, lived in ignorance. It might have been consciously wrong or just simply ignorant of right. But I think this is why entrepreneurship to me is the greatest journey. It's the greatest opportunity, because let's extrapolate that scenario into other areas of life, right?
Right.
So all the same things that are manifest in that moment of you asking that question in that room with that group of people that led to those opportunities that are probably a huge piece of how you got where you are right now. How does that translate into a marriage? Yeah. Right? Like the unasked question or the unexamined weakness, right? What kills marriages? It's not the conversations you have, it's the conversations you don't have, 100%. Right? So these, that's where I see these skills transfer across all of life. And this is why I'm such an evangelist for entrepreneurship. And I think you guys embody this so well. To me, it's the reason I respect you guys so much and I love calling you friends. It's not because, frankly, I don't even know how much money you guys have. And I don't really care.
Well, we don't talk about it much.
No, it's how this way of being shows up across the entirety of a life, right? And in your relationships and in your friendships and in the way you lead your teams and in the way you take care of yourselves. And
so how would you improve a company if you don't know where you're weak?
Well, you wouldn't.
You wouldn't. You know, so you have to shine a light there, right? And be willing to say, you know what? Fulfillment needs to get better. Sales needs to get better. Marketing needs to get better. And it's hard to, when it's your own business and your own baby, to shine light where you're weak. Individually, personally, professionally, in front of other people. It doesn't. You have to face that demon head on.
Yeah, and by the way, that is vulnerability.
100%.
That is, I mean, literally, we can be wounded where we are weak.
Exactly.
That's the term.
Yeah.
So one thing I think you guys have brought up, probably some great fodder, a great place to go with this. You talked about bringing up your partnership in that meeting. Let's talk about that. Again, I don't get the opportunity to talk to business partners on a show very often. I don't know the data, but I wonder what percentage of businesses involve partners.
Right.
It seems like it's pretty high.
It does.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
In a sense, it is like a marriage. I think if you get it right, there's a 1 + 1 = 11 aspect to it. And if you get it wrong, there's a 1 + 1 =
-1.
Death, dismemberment, right? But talk a little bit about that, guys. Like, I appreciate that you've already established that you haven't always had a perfect partnership.
Yeah. Well, dude, I mean,
You talk about some of the struggles.
Yeah. I mean, any relationship
wants to
can
go
have
first?
struggles, especially when it gets, get so close and ingrained, and there's, all kinds of things. And you know what? Sometimes, humans are just messy, man. Like, it's like, it's kind of hard. On paper, it would be perfect to say, Jeff, you're really brilliant and great at this. So here's your lane. And Trevor, you're really great and perfect at this. So here's your lane. And Kale, you're really perfect and great. So stay in this and we're going to have this massively successful company. But we're so messed up as humans and we don't honestly always know all of our strengths and our weaknesses. And we don't know what we're great at and what we're not great at. And so we've been figuring that all out. But at the end of the day, I really think that the reason we're still here is because it's a commitment. You know what I mean? A reason people are still married through challenges is it's a commitment that you made. Like, okay, guys, we have this opportunity. We have this company that we're creating and we have these goals. And if we really want to achieve those goals, we know we're going to go through some shit. So you got to be aware of that. And then you got to be committed to seeing it through. Like if there were literally Trevor was like, hey man, I got to go. I got to exit for a little while and I need to go work on me or something like that. I'm not gonna be like, okay, cool, man. Well, give me some of your shares because I'm going to be taking on more than you. You know what I mean? Right. Like we've never had those conversations. We may have had conversations of disagreements or, hey man, like we're running this play and it's your play and it's not working and we need to do something different. And that's hard to have that conversation because you don't want to let that person down. And, but at the same time, like you've got to fix an issue and you got to bring it to the awareness of that it is an issue. And so there's all those challenges. But at the end of the day, if you're like really committed, okay, which I am. Like, I want to take this thing to the finish line. I've been telling people here, hey, this company's going to make millionaires. And, hey, we're going to make a difference in people's lives, which is our clients. And we're going to change the standard, which we want accounting firms to copy us one day because we've done it so well. And so we're committed to this mission. If we're truly committed to it, you're not going to just be like, well, hey, man, you're out. I've been a part of partnerships and I've been squoze out of them. And I know how that, not only do I know how that feels, but I know the value I brought there and that they just totally brushed it off. And it was just like nothing to them when they wanted to screw us over, embezzle and shut the company down and go in different directions. And it's like, you guys forgot all the value I brought with all these relationships and these lead sources. And, and just because I'm not in the day to day, like you are, people always see what they do and they don't, and they never see what other people do, but they always see what other people don't do. Right. And so it's really hard. And so I try to come to that place with everything, like Jeremy and JD, like we got in places where it was like, you know what, man? I don't really know what the hell they're doing. And it was easy for me to see what they're not doing, but I didn't realize what they were doing. And so we've had to get better over the years of having those conversations. Okay, well, what are you doing? And what's fair then? If I'm doing this and producing this, shouldn't I get paid on this? And you should get paid on what you produce. And then our owners' draws, we can talk like our shares are our shares. Like we had to kind of create a lot of that through those conversations. But ultimately, you have to really be committed to the end result. Like, I want to really make this company valuable that makes a difference. And I want to hold the promises of the people and the leaders in this company where I said, hey man, we're going to make millionaires in this company. And that's you guys if you stick around. Like, I want that to be true at the end. So those are the commitments.
You know, the first rule of, I mean, if you go through Think and Grow Rich, right? Whatever it is, 13 principles. Number one is burning desire. It seems, I mean, this has been my experience in partnerships, is that you have to, you have to have a burning desire for success because succeeding is hard, but you have to have an equally burning desire for success with your partnership.
Absolutely.
You have to want to succeed as partners, succeed in being partners as bad as you want to succeed in business.
Yeah,
I think, or else eventually, you'll choose the business over the partner.
Well, when there's issues, are you committed to resolving them? Mm-hmm. Right. Like whether it is in a marriage or
so the conversations in other words, not having the conversations.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah. And so the issue really in that scenario wasn't, me and Kale. It was other partners that we had that he was discussing, like how, if we feel a certain way, how should we react? And a lot of people are like, oh, you shouldn't just get rid of them, blah, 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 just kick them to the curb almost type situation, right? That was some of the feedback that we received from some of the people in the crowd. And, traveling a lot with Kale, we've had a lot of time in airports and airplanes and to have conversations. Here's the truth of the matter, right? Because we are vulnerable. We're very open people. And that's a good thing. So hopefully somebody can learn something from our openness, right? It got to a point where me and Kel were doing a lot of the heavy lifting, and that was the hiring, firing, operations, traveling, podcast,
bringing in the business, managing the relationships,
stuff like that. So, Kel would handle a lot of the referrals, and I would try to be in the internal guy, right? As much as I could be with us being gone and out of town, and that. Just so you understand, you take your eyes off the prize, so to speak, go out of town too much, and you don't have somebody watching over your business, your baby, chaos will ensue. That's another lesson. So always make sure that you have somebody covering home base. But we were trying to do it all, right? We were trying to be the guys that are getting attention on our companies. We were trying to be the guys operating the companies. And, everybody likes to give themselves credit that they can do it all, right? Until you can't and you burn out, right? And there were conversations of, is the partnership going to work? Because obviously, if we wanted to, we could have easily duplicated it because we had the relationships, we had the sales, we had the fulfillment, we were the ones managing and running it and traveling and doing the podcast stuff. And it just got to the point where we're like, yo, we just need to have a conversation and say, here's the deal. The distributions are even. The work ain't. You know what I mean? And so we've flat out said we're just going to pay ourselves an override off of the gross sales per week if we're the guys having to deal with it all, right? And so and that's a tough conversation to have, with your partners, For the first week or so, it was a little like they didn't, it was what it was. And now we're all good, right? Yeah. But sometimes that like, are you willing to go on some of those bumpy roads? And stay on the road,
and tolerate it long enough,
and see where it leads you, because it will be smooth again,
right?
You know what I mean? And so we had to address that kind of head on, because there was resentment factors happening. Like if we felt like we were doing this, and then the distributions at the end of the month were sixes, is the exact same across the board. The business would implode with resentments, so you have to be honest about how you feel in that situation. And so we had to have a come to Jesus meeting and be honest and say, this is what's now going to happen. The other option is, we could buy you out, you could buy us out. We could, we can go about it different ways, but this is how we feel. And this is what we think is right.
Well, at the end of the day,
and that's how we moved forward.
You also, you want to make sure that the rainmakers are incentivized. You know what I mean? It's like, hey, you can be a rainmaker too. You know what I mean? And so can you, and so can you. And it's like, you know what? If you guys want to go and we really want to make this thing like fair, right? Like we're going to take distributions. We're not going to bleed your distributions by just taking all the top line revenue now, you know what I mean? So what we're going to do is everybody has the opportunity. If you go and bring in business, like you should be paid on that. And if you go let's create what that override is for the business that you bring in, right? And the business that you manage. And so that's what we need to do. And at the end of the day, you should want that because one, if you want to go make more money, you can. All you got to do is go build relationships, bring business.
Yeah.
And you should want the person that is driving all of that to be incentivized instead of full of resentments. You know what I mean? So that's really how we tried to create our partnership after that.
We flat out told them, us too motivated, your income won't change. I know we're making more, but you won't make less. Us making more doesn't mean you making less.
Right.
And we will ensure that happens because now you got people that are motivated and not on the road with resentment. We're on the road with a purpose because we know it's going to be rewarded.
I think the lesson here to sort of take what's situational for you guys and extract, general wisdom or tactical wisdom for everyone as entrepreneurs is, I think as business owners, as founders, as entrepreneurial creators, you have to get real, and I've learned this through so many iterations of business now, you have to get really good at compartmentalizing and creating a mental map of where does my role begin and end as the owner?
Yeah.
What roles am I functioning within the business, and where do those roles begin and end? And also, what is the compensation as an owner? What is the compensation for the roles? Effectively, you guys were owners, brand ambassadors, business development executives, sales leaders, trainers.
Right. Yeah.
And if you were to create an organizational chart, there would be compensation associated with those different boxes on the chart. And if you're sitting in those boxes, you should get that compensation. That's
right.
And being able to have really healthy, it's all we're saying is choose your hard all over again, right?
Yeah.
Having hard conversations is no different than going to the gym.
Right.
You either do the hard thing now or things blow up later.
Right.
And maybe it's a heart attack if it's physical, maybe it's a broken partnership if it's a business. Either way, do the hard thing now, you'll be better off.
Right.
Right.
And honestly, dude, I mean, at the end of the day, as an entrepreneur, you really got to become a person of accountability. It wasn't their fault that we let it get to this point without getting to without actually establishing these things up front,
Right.
And so it's like, you sitting there with resentments isn't solving anything. It's like, where did I go wrong, and what do we need to do to move forward?
They didn't violate a written agreement, did they?
No.
There's no point in sitting around blaming each other. You know what I mean? And if you're really committed to this mission, it's like, okay, there's no point in blaming. How are we going to respond to this? And where am I accountable so we can learn from it and we can all accept it and we can move forward? Where are you accountable for the problems that you're having? Where, in your life and in this business that we have? And where am I accountable for this situation that's been created? And a lot of times I have to own it, man. I'd say 90% of the problems that I've had in my life is because just like we talked about, didn't have the conversation. I don't want to hurt somebody, or I'm playing around in my mind with well, maybe I'm just being insecure. So I'm not going to go and maybe hurt someone's feelings or tear someone down if really I'm just being insecure. And so, you know what I mean? It's so then I'm not going to have the conversation then, you know what I mean? And so you have to be accountable for that.
Yeah. And it's probably good to sleep on it.
Yeah.
But then if you wake up the next day and the problem's still there, then don't sleep on it 100 more times.
You don't want to be a reactive lunatic. You made me feel like, because then you're not accountable either. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I feel like we're leading to this thing that I've had in my mind the whole time we've been talking. Honestly, that was in my mind even when I was on you guys' show. And it's something I've seen you guys, I think I've seen a shift or an evolution, a leveling up. I would describe it as a leveling up. I know I've been through the same. And it's changing the perspective and the intention in a business from... or maybe not, whatever it comes from, it's moving towards really playing the long game and building a brand.
Yep.
Right? I've seen it with, even when I asked about how you guys have kind of shed businesses and, your energy is narrowed and dovetailed together. You guys are building a really badass accounting and bookkeeping services brand.
Yeah.
And you're building a really badass business owner, influencer, online brand.
Right.
And it seemed, what I'm hearing as a common thread through a lot of the discussions you guys are having is that your time horizon is extended in terms of the way you think about your business.
You're exactly right, because right when we decided to do a podcast, me and Kale turned to each other and said, we're not going to judge it for 3 to 5 years. Why would you start a business and judge it in 3 months or 6 months? Mm-hmm. You didn't start a business to get rich or change your life in 3 months. You started a business because you wanted a better future, not a better 3 months. Yeah. Right. And so you forget that when you're getting pounded, right? And your face is just getting smashed and you're 3 months in, 6 months in, or a year in.
Yeah.
But we flat out set the expectation, like, dude, we might get 5 downloads, you know? And like, we were setting ourselves up to be like, let's not judge it based upon the downloads. Let's give it the time that it needs to unfold and show us what value it really has and what it could really, really do. Because I don't believe a business, I think 3 to 5 years is the mark where a business starts showing you what it really can do. Mm-hmm. Right. And so that's what I wanted. I wanted that perspective with a podcast as well. I didn't want to expect something to ignite just overnight and then us being majorly successful in 6 months, or the new Joe Rogans or whatever 6 months later. It's not possible.
Well, if you're comparing yourself to other shows and you're only looking for a quick result, I mean, that's what causes a lot of people to give up. You know what I mean? Really quickly.
I forget what the numbers are. I think 90% of podcasts, because, you know, if you say, I'm starting a podcast, people will be like, oh, well, statistically, that's a terrible decision. There's like 3 million podcasts, right? Yeah, but did you know that, and forgive me, I might mess up these numbers a little bit, but the principle is going to hold. Only 10% of podcasts get to 3 episodes, and only 1% get to 20 episodes.
Wow.
Yeah.
So just get to 20 episodes.
Everybody's a great starter.
And 2.97 million of those 3 million competitors are gone if you just get to 20 episodes.
Yeah.
Right. You create your own odds.
Make noise long enough, somebody's going to listen.
Yeah.
You know.
So talk to me. But I've seen it too, even with your accounting business.
Yeah.
And it's not like you were, okay, the podcast was new and you're like, yeah, we're going to give it time. But you weren't new to the accounting business. But talk to me about the different way that you approach this business now from maybe when I met you guys 8 or 9 years ago, when I think it's safe to say you were much shorter term thinkers then than you are now.
Yeah.
What's the difference day to day in terms of how you show up and how you make decisions?
Yeah, we talked about that. To be quite honest, and if being vulnerable, like, we were kind of just getting in business to make money and cash grab. You know what I mean? And it's like, and early on, that's, especially when you're sales guys that go on and start a company, it's like all about getting that money.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And
which, by the way, is a good thing, because at least you get that money.
Yeah. But you know, like
non-sales guys start companies and they don't get anything.
Yeah. But when the complaints roll in, you know, it doesn't feel so good, especially if you're a person that cares, right? And that's one thing I think that we've always had, all of us partners, all 4 of us here, is like, you know, of course we're in it for the money. But at the end of the day, we all care. We're all caring human beings. Like, dude, it doesn't feel good to have someone call you and be like, dude, I feel like you guys ripped me off. You didn't provide me the very good service. You know what I mean? And so we learned, and we've learned along the way and are still learning that, you know, like, when you actually build your business with a long-term vision and you're willing to invest into the systems and the processes, the customer experience, and your compounding is going to be so much more valuable. Early on, it might look a lot more attractive to cash grab. You know what I mean? Like, if you're a $1 million business with a 50% profit margin, you know, like, that can look pretty attractive when you're just like churning and burning people. But dude, that's never a sustainable business model, because you're never going to hold customers long term. So when you've got like processes in place to really create an experience and fulfill people at high standards, like, okay, well, now those customers turn into more customers. And even though it took longer to get to that 500,000, by doing it right, because you're investing money into those systems and those processes and that experience, it's like, okay, well, now what does your 2 and 3 look like versus that cash grab model? Mm-hmm. And, you know, we used to be cash grab guys because we're just trying to get ahead and feed our families, and we had these goals, and sometimes we got caught up in the lifestyle stuff and just all those things, right? But that shift happened. You know, I don't know exactly when.
I was going to say, how long has it been?
I think it happened
I'll tell you exactly when it happened, and that's what I was going to jump in when you were done anyways, is when we started really doubling down on self-improvement. The funny thing is, our business improved, right? We demanded a higher level from us, and then you're not going to walk into a business that's half-assing something when you're a higher level individual, because that won't be okay.
It's the law of the lid.
It won't
That's
be
John
okay.
Maxwell's law of the lid. You cannot lead an organization beyond the level to which you lead yourself.
Exactly. And so
true.
when you start leading yourself and investing into you, you're like, and then you get knowledge and information, because again, we were sales guys, not privy to self-improvement information initially. And they start talking about customer experience, and they start talking about more the long game, when all we really cared about was our experience in business and making money. And then what happens if you want to make money? Cool, do that. If you want to get rich, worry about the other people's experience when they do business with you. And that's the game changer right
And
there.
how long ago would you say that paradigm shifted for you? Because I have a follow-up question, but I want to know the time.
3 to 4 years ago was when we first started entering the self-improvement space. And then we really, on those long plane rides and in the hotels, we're like, dude, we should maybe like take less money from the business and put it back into the business and just make it better, which is the part that most I think struggle with.
So that leads to that was going to be my question. In those 4 years, how much short-term money personally, the two of you, have you said no to because of that perspective shift?
I don't do it.
If you're comfortable,
I don't even know
how to.
I don't even know how to quantify it. You know, I do know that.
And I'm talking short-term cash, not long-term value. Because my next question is, how much value have you built? But how much cash did you turn down?
It's really hard to tell, but I will tell you that Kale.
Is it safe to say it's on the order of seven figures?
Oh yeah, easily.
Yes. Well, let's put it this way. We got rid of $3 million worth of referrals because they didn't match our values to us. You know what I mean?
And full disclosure, I'm a client of you guys. I have seen, and we're friends, so I know what you're talking about. I mean, you guys intentionally shrank your business to build a more sustainable, value-centric business.
Yeah. And I think that you actually, we did a podcast on this one time. It's like the step back in order to step up, type thing. Is like every single time that we've noticed that we've leveled up, it was right after we took a huge step back or made a sacrifice. And instead of us, making $1 million a year each, we each made $500,000, and $1 million went into fulfillment, and then buying A players to come into the organization, recruiting, things like that. And every single time that we've put money back into our business and invested it duplicates every single time. It multiplies every single time. It just takes time to do it. That's the patient level issue that people don't have because they're not playing the long game.
How long would you say it took before the short-term sacrifices of saying no to taking cash out of the business and or saying no to opportunities to generate cash in a way that wasn't congruent with your long-term plan? How long did it take for the enterprise value to grow to where you had recouped and then some what you turned down in the short term?
I'll put it this way.
Maybe it's still happening.
There was a 3-year period there where our income ended up doubling every single year. After we made the sacrifices, we were doing the self-improvement. That very following year after that, we saw the result. And then the momentum continued to happen because we continued to do the same things that we were doing to get the initial result. So guess what happened? If it was a 2x result, guess what? That 2x then was now 2x'd. And then again that year was 2x'd.
So you were saying no to things that didn't fit your values. And in the second year, you were actually making more money.
When we started creating personal values.
Yeah.
And then it shifted into business values.
Yeah, you guys can, for the audience, I want them to feel this because this is, and it's ironic. I did it about 4 years ago too. I mean, you guys remember, I sold my agency, I exited, I frankly got kind of screwed, and I had to emotionally and neurologically let go of that and recenter myself around, like you're saying, personal values, personal growth, and start doing stuff that frankly was just a lot less selfish.
Well, it's
for a period of time.
It's a lot easier to make decisions in life in general when you have values. I don't think people have values, so therefore they're swayed with.
Well, and it's exhausting.
Whatever the current is. Like if I'm hanging out with you and you love Ford, I might say, yeah, I love Ford too. And then I hang out with Kel the next day, he loves Chevy. I'm like, dude, I love Chevys. There's so many people that they succumb to their environment. You're in Vegas.
Yeah.
What do? You party till 3 a.m. and you're at a strip club. Guess what? I used to be the guy that would succumb to that type of an environment. But now Trevor is Trevor, whether he's in Vegas, whether he's in Texas. I still do what I do on a day-to-day basis because I've designed my day, and the circumstance or the environment no longer matters because I have values, and I value self, and I value a certain standard. So therefore, it doesn't matter who's around me or what's going on. I have something that can dictate right from wrong. And is this moving the needle or is it not moving the needle based upon the values?
Yeah. So the reason I was smiling as you were talking about Vegas and the, time and values and what's important to you is, so I think you guys know this. So I own 2 units at Vidara in City Center.
Yeah.
And so I have anytime I want, I can reserve my own rooms to go stay there. Yeah. And Jacqueline and I, we will not stay in our own spot because the gym at Vidara doesn't open until 8 o'clock. And I think it's a joke.
Throws you through
I think it's pathetic. Put the people that want to work out, we want to work out early.
Yeah.
I have boycotted my own properties there. I'm fine with the income from other people that want to sleep in and not work out. But I will not stay there because the gym doesn't open early enough. I will go pay to stay at the Wynn where the gym opens at 5:30.
Well, you probably walk by the gym. There's pointless. They shouldn't even have made a gym. I bet you walk by the gym. There's like one person here or there, right? But if you open it up early enough, the people that are really, truly committed to self and honor themselves and have values and standards, those are the type. I meet the best people at 5 or 6 in the morning when I'm in the gym.
Oh,
you know what I mean? Because I'm like, okay, this person they hold themselves accountable. They hold themselves to a high standard and they're willing to do hard shit. I vibe with them. You know what I mean?
I'm not disagreeing, but like my morning routine's different, but I still have a morning routine. You know what I mean?
Just for me, I'm not going to allow myself to be in an environment that doesn't support the life that I've chosen to live.
Right.
That's it, right?
I don't care if somebody wakes up and does the ice baths or meditates or reads, whatever makes them feel good about who they are and living in their body as this being.
Yeah.
I think that that's the most important thing. And I'm not going to say if I like to go hit golf balls that you have to go hit golf balls because I'm successful. If that's the way that I meditate, so to speak, or get into a flow state, yours is going to be the piano. Like that. Jeff's not going to say everybody go learn the piano because I'm Jeff and you're not Jeff. And if you want to be me, you got to do that. The entire point of this is just having a standard and having some values and having a routine that can be. The idea is your brain loves to predict the future, right? And the more that it's wrong, it's kind of glitches out. So my brain can easily predict what tomorrow morning looks like, right? And so it doesn't have to think as hard.
You choose to live intentionally to maintain environments that allow you to keep living the life you've decided upon.
And I'm always trying to add to it. I'm always got the lab coat on, so I have my staples, right?
Like, I was going to say, yes, it's ever evolving.
It's ever evolving, yes, because my routine didn't go from sleeping in to 4 things in the morning. It went from nothing to waking up early and going to the gym, and that was it. Yeah. And then you do that for a period of time, you're like, okay, well, how else can I improve? Okay, I'm going to wake up early, go to the gym, and I'm going to start reading when I get home from the gym. And then you're like, wow, this is cool. I'm seeing growth. What else can I add?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then that's what you do is you continue to have the lab coat on, but always do the things that you know are your staple. Yeah. But what else could potentially be another thing that could be your staple that makes you level up again?
I hated waking up and hurrying, going right to the gym.
Yeah.
I hated it. You know what I mean? I was just like, I don't like this. You hear about the things like the 5 a.m. club and you're, excuse my language, but you're like, a big puss if you're not there by freaking 5 a.m. And I was just like, I don't like it, dude. Like, I like getting up, having a little me time. I like doing my reading. I like getting in a different headspace. I still like going to the gym, but I started going at 9 a.m. You know what I mean? And I was I still met really valuable people there. And I was just like, all right, cool, man. Like, I like this for me, but now I go at 7. You know what I mean? And it's like, okay, now I go at 7. It's like, I change it.
There's no right or wrong. Right. There's just intentional
structure
versus random.
Yeah.
Correct.
Right.
Exactly. That's really what it comes down to, because you know you better than I do.
Yeah.
He knows him better than I do. Yeah. Right. But I know me better than you guys do. And I know what makes me feel good. and I know what makes me want to perform at a different level. I know what releases the dopamine in my brain. You know what I mean? So I'm going to pull the levers for me that make me feel good. You need to pull those levers.
Right.
You need to pull those levers. And we just can't lie about it.
Yeah.
When we audit self or whatever and we say what makes us feel good, you know, it can't be crack cocaine. Because logically it don't.
I just
help you.
remember, and it really wasn't that long ago. I just remember being like, oh my God, I got to do this to like, you know, keep up. But then I'm doing exactly what we're talking about. And I'm like comparing myself. And then I'm like, I'm caring what people think and all this stuff. And it's like, you know what? You just got to get to that place where you're like, I know what I need to do to be successful, to feel rewarded internally. And so I'm going to do those things, but I'm going to do my terms, right? Like I'm going to go at 9 a.m. instead of 5 a.m. But I felt like for a long time, like, man, I'm really falling behind if I'm not going to 5 a.m. every day, like, you know, Trevor and some of these other guys in our like Apex group and stuff like that. You know what I mean? You almost feel like the outcast if you're not, you know, doing what they do. And so, especially when they're super successful, like I remember Kurt Lennington was just like, you know, he called me out on some stuff. And so I was like, okay, well, shit, I guess I better get back up and go at 5 a.m. And, you know, I just had to find what worked for me, right? But make sure that I am checking the boxes of like what is going to propel me.
Well, I bet you that there's highly successful people and they love to get into their flow state from 5 p.m. to 4 a.m.
I was like, I love sleeping in. That's what I do.
Really?
I don't do my shit till later.
But some people are like night owls, right?
Well,
and that's just what
that was me when I was a musician.
Yeah.
And honestly,
Yeah.
I was a really successful musician. I you know, made a lot of progress very quickly as a musician, and I would literally go to bed at like 7 a.m.
Yeah.
But I mean, the reason I decided I had to flip it is because I have kids.
Yeah.
You know, it was like, what does the life that I want look like? Well, it does involve mornings with my kids.
Yeah.
So I have so much I have to get done before it's time for that. And that is what drives when I get up. It's not because I feel great at that hour.
Yeah.
By the time they're up, then you've got 6 things out of the way.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, exactly.
And so it's like, okay, that's 6 less things I got to do today. So that's more opportunities to spend.
So let me, so I want to end with one question. I'm wondering if you guys could go back and start over, start your entrepreneurial journey over, knowing what you know now.
Yeah.
What would be some things that you would do different from day one in light of these ideas, right?
Yeah.
And I think I'll set up that what I'm trying to get to is, I think a lot of people think that playing the long game is something they'll have the luxury to do once all their short-term needs are met.
Yeah, right.
And I think that's a mistake. And if you guys don't agree with me, tell me. But if you do, let's talk about it.
I do think it's a mistake. And if you start with the long-term in mind, it'll create less chaos for you. If you're not starting with the long-term in mind and you're just kind of operating day-to-day for self, for your own personal experience to grab money, you'll actually experience more pain and more chaos that way than having the structure. Structure doesn't mean harder. It just actually simplifies things.
So what would you do
easier.
differently then if you were going back to day one, you know, with this in mind? What's like an example of something you would actually do different?
I would live the life that I live now, external, even outside of professionally in work. I would start my day and operate my day before I get here a lot differently, because I can only perform up to the level that I feel good about me and who I am, right? Like they say, I think we talked about it even in our podcast, you can't outperform how you see yourself, right? And the difference in confidence and self-esteem, all of those things, guess what? I lacked self-esteem and confidence even when I made a lot of money. But guess what? The fact that I've been so consistent, guaranteed in the top 1% of consistency with my daily habits and routines, that gives me confidence knowing that I'm doing things that other people aren't willing to do. And my self-esteem goes up because I'm willing to invest into myself. I care enough about me to do the hard things. And then when you do those things and you have self-esteem and confidence, it steamrolls into everything else in life. And so I would start with me as the individual to make sure that I am made whole and I feel good about who I am so that I can operate more freely in the business enterprise side of things, right?
Beautiful.
Yeah. You know, when I was early in business, I used to fantasize about the day that I didn't have to work anymore. I used to fantasize about arriving somewhere. You know what I mean?
And we're all just laughing.
You know what I mean?
Now,
and
like veterans were like, oh yeah, I remember that.
Yeah.
Let's just say back then, if if somebody told you that you would be in the situation that you're in today, you would have felt as though that it was time for you to retire and enjoy, and it would be the end because
why would I keep
millions
working?
of dollars?
Yeah,
like when I'm worth millions, I'm gonna.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
But back then, so like I was working really hard to try and achieve something fast, right? Without the long vision in mind. And I made a lot of mistakes back then because here I am trying to lead this company. And this is even before Trevor was my partner. I was just trying to lead this company and be the man. And it was all just for me. And I wish I would have just learned sooner that, what humility really was, right? And to be able to lead where I'm strong and follow where I need to follow, allow other people to come in and lead, and have enough humility to embrace like that I need these people, and to build the team that we have now. Like if we had the team and that we have now 10 years ago, like we'd already be so much further ahead, but that doesn't really matter at the end of the day. Matters is like what, like how we feel about, where we end up. But I'm really glad that I have a lot of that in my mind now of like, okay, cool. Like I know where I'm strong and I can lead, and I know where I need to take steps back and let other people lead. And I know that I am always going to be pursuing growth no matter what till the day we die. And so we're a work in progress till the day we die. I didn't understand that back then. I thought, oh my gosh, I'm going to try and make as much money as I can off all these people. It was almost kind of schemey. You know what I mean? It was like schemey. It's like, how can I get as much money right now to become a millionaire? And then I just don't even have to worry about work or money anymore. And I can just travel around and hang out and do whatever I want to do. And it's like, that was just a really unhealthy mindset, So that's the only thing I really think I would change is like, man, I'm gonna go back and be a person of humility and really adopt the fact that like I enjoy work and growth, and I enjoy building something that means something, and so I would just wish I would learn that sooner, I guess. I don't know when, but
day one.
Yeah, hopefully somebody listening just learned it now.
Yeah,
so thank you.
Yeah,
like I said, the whole pain thing, and I don't know if it was in this podcast or the last one, that I just don't understand why humans have to go through so much pain in order to create change, right? And even like information is useless unless applied, right? Like there's so much information that is given, and I don't think enough people, like they're like, that sounds cool or whatever, but that's still Jeff or that's still Kale. Like they're different still. Even if I did those things, I wouldn't get the result because I'm not them, right? It's as simply as literally just being consistent and doing the work and saying, am I outworking everybody else? Like if you're outworking everybody else, you're doing the right thing. One is your heart of service. Do you have are you an individual that is giving, that is caring? Because like when we got a customer complaint or an issue, it was literally like a dagger in my heart, because it was like, we created Easier Accounting to be the change. We created Easier Accounting to serve entrepreneurs because we're entrepreneurs and we understood the struggle. And so we did that. And then when we got to a rapid growth period, we started hearing some complaints or having some issues. And it was just like, are we starting to go down the path of traditional accounting firms now? Overworking our people or not having enough staff to fulfill at a high level, right? And it hurt. And we needed that. We needed that hurt. We needed that pain, because that's not why we were created. That wasn't the vision on day one when we got excited about what we were trying to build. And it was a slap in the face, a reality check. I wish we could have gone into it with all of these wonderful things that we've talked about, but unfortunately it's not real until it's real, for people.
Well, they say your worst customer is your best teacher.
Yeah, no kidding.
No doubt. No doubt.
Well, thanks guys. This has been everything I hope to be, honestly.
Yeah. I love today,
pleasure.
dude.
Yeah.
I love every minute that I get to spend with you. We don't get to spend a whole lot of time together. We're crazy busy. I know
which is ironic, because I can literally see my office from here out that window.
But that don't mean that you're not gone.
Right.
You have a structured routine the way that so do we.
How can the world come find more from you guys? Obviously, we talked about RBO, but like, what do you got out there?
You can go to easieraccounting.com if you need bookkeeping, accounting services, any of the fun stuff or the boring stuff, I guess I should say, that nobody wants to talk about. We can talk about it. But for real, like, I just want people to understand and know that there's people that are out there that have been through what you're going through, and you're going to get past it, and you're going to be 10 times better off because of the thing that you're cursing right now. And we try to put out content and information on real business owners to give people hope, right? And so if somebody wants to connect with us, we answer 100% of our DMs.
Yeah, they really do. I mean, I've seen it. I've seen you guys doing it.
100% of them because, you know, and it just is what it is, right? And so if you want to come find us, you want to connect with us, you want to have a conversation, or you want to pick our brain or whatever it is, right? Come find us at Real Business Owners. Go listen to our podcasts. You know, we own 60-day credit repair. We have easier accounting. We're investors in a whole bunch of different businesses. And all of those experiences, we try to be raw and real and vulnerable with people so that they can extract some of the mistakes that we've made and not, you know, apply it in their business and their life and be relatable.
And Kale, you have a book out, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's just called The Ultimate Networking Machine. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which is a really good nickname for Kale, by the way.
I mean, dude,
I heard the title, I was like, oh yeah.
I see people all the time that I think, wow, that's like next level. Like they've like nailed it like at a much higher level than me. And I think that's cool. I'm still learning from those people, but man, you can't do anything without people. People are like our greatest, you know, commodity, you know what I mean? In the world, like we can't do anything or build anything great alone. And so I love putting myself out there and meeting people and challenging myself. And that's really what the book is. You know, it's really just about how to really magnetize people to you, and build great things with it. You know what I mean? And it comes from being a person of accountability.
I've been watching you do for a decade.
So
I can say that it's an authentically written book by a legitimate expert on that subject.
Well, I appreciate that, man. I stress so much out about writing. Is this too basic? Is this not enough? You know, but anyway, it's out there, and I have had some good reviews from it. It's just on Amazon.
It's a good book. It's a good book, especially for people that are going to label themselves, I'm not a reader. I would say that that's an amazing book to jump into because it's a page turner, you know, and those people that label themselves, I'm not a reader, that's they're maybe reading something that's not touching them or whatever. And if you label yourself as that, you probably haven't read enough to be able to call yourself a reader. I can't call myself a runner if I've read a run one time.
Right.
You know, I have to run over and over and over to be considered a runner, right? And so you just have to read over and over in order to get better at it. But when I read Kale's book, it's a page turner. It's easy to read, and you'll find the back of the page or the back of the book real quick.
Super cool. Well, guys, thanks for being guests
you, man.
on Unlock Your Potential. It's been a lot of fun.
It's been great.
This was awesome. Thanks for having us.
If you loved that episode, then you're definitely gonna love this one. Check it out.
What's the difference between winning and losing? What's the separator between success and failure? What's the separator between being happy and sad? I believe it's one more. You're one decision away from changing your life. You are much closer than you think that you're one away.